Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Choose Inclusion for our Black Voices Matter series. I am joined by my wonderful co-hosts, as usual, UB and Mike. How are you guys doing?
Excellent, Nina.
Yeah, pretty good. Welcome back, everybody.
So we have a great guest today. We're excited to talk to him. His name's Rhoden Monrose. Rhoden is the founder of a company called Cara Club. And Cara Club is actually solving the lack of diversity on nonprofit boards. He's building a connection between the world of finance to the nonprofit world and coming up with a really cool solution around this. And so we're excited to talk about that today. Rhoden, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So Rhoden, I want to start off by just simply asking you, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I think kind of your personal journey has a obviously impact on the solutions that you're proposing today. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are?
Yeah, so I moved to the United States when I was 12 years old. I grew up on the very beautiful island of St. Lucia. And my mom lived in the United States. So she wanted my sister and I to get the best possible education. That was always something that was very important. And so when when she finally was able to get us here, she got my sister and I was 12, my sister was 11. And one of the things that really stuck out for me was, my mom was a nanny, so it was very difficult for her to provide exactly the education that she wanted, especially with the type of the schools, the quality of schools that existed at the time in Harlem. So nonprofits played such an important role in that they gave me access to like after school programs and scholarships that made it possible for us to go to some really incredible private high schools. I went to a school in Massachusetts. My sister ended up at a school in Connecticut. And it was such a massive difference from the opportunities that were available to us in Harlem. That was certainly unfortunate, but like we had to travel that far to get that kind of a quality education. But my mother wanted to really make sure we were able to get that, and that's what it took. Fast forward, I ended up going to college. Then after college, I graduated and worked on Wall Street for about 5 years. During that experience, I learned a lot more about the other side of the nonprofit world. A lot of the people that I worked with were on nonprofit boards. And one of the things that I found very interesting, very striking, was that they were also people who tended to be more successful, more empathetic, more well-liked, they exuded more leadership qualities. And I always found that very fascinating, how people were able to benefit from nonprofits, not just as in my case, the recipient of the nonprofit service, but also people who were involved at the board level, who were providing and made possible the services that were being provided and the programs. So that was like very interesting kind of learning experience for me. And Cara Club really came from a confluence of those experiences. I wanted to make it possible for people to get involved in nonprofit boards, specifically people who were otherwise very busy professionals, may not have the access to the network, may not have the time. We wanted to make it easy for them to find nonprofit boards that aligned with what they were passionate about. And that's how Cara Club was born.
And Rhoden, thank you for that. One question that we usually always ask our Black Voices Matter guests too is, first of all, like, how are you doing given everything that's going on? How's it going? How are you doing?
I'm taking things one day at a time. 2020 has been a roller coaster year for everyone. For me, it has kind of been a little compounded by the fact that I'm a startup founder. So certainly like companies have been impacted by everything that's going on. But on a more even personal level is the fact that like my sister and my mother both work at New York City hospitals. So there's always that anxiety and concern every day, making sure that like they're good. And add a whole other dimension to this is just the Black Lives Matter movement and how that has gained so much momentum, not just in the United States, but globally. So just being able to digest all of that at once has been a lot. And so, and let's not forget, just we're in an election year, so that's also another layer. But yeah, just being able to digest all of that at once is a lot for anyone. And yeah, it's been tough. But at the end of the day, one of the things that keeps me going is actually the work that I do at Carry Club. That's the one thing that I know, no matter what, will continue to have a lasting impact, and that makes me look forward to Mondays.
Rhoden, I'm really glad you shared that, because I was, how are you directing your energy is super important. And I really like the model that the true impact model that you're bringing to diversify boards. Can you give some examples of some success stories that you've already had with your organization?
Yeah, so I mean, we've placed hundreds of young professionals on nonprofit boards. We've been at this for 6 years now. We work with some amazing companies that have really leaned into it. Some of our clients are firms like Citigroup and Morgan Stanley and PJT Partners. We have some private equity firms like KKR and Blackstone. And we have some law firms. We have Davis Polk, we have Sidley Austin. So one of the things that's been really amazing is the fact that companies, and many of them are really the top in their industry, have leaned into this. They see the value in it, and they're willing to pay for the service to offer it to their employees, which is why we're able to make this matching happen without the nonprofits having to pay, which is, I mean, that's very important. So for me, one of the stories that has stuck with me for a while is it was actually right around Thanksgiving last year. I went to back when we were able to do that, I went to a nonprofit fundraising event, and it was actually just downtown New York City, so not that far from me. And I was like really pleasantly surprised to see how well the event went. It was very well attended. Everyone was having fun. They were raising a lot of money that night. And it stuck out to me because I remember going to that same event the year before, and it was, mild. It was not nearly as much. So they made such an impressive turnaround just like 1 year after. And so further into the night, I actually discovered that the entire event was organized by this one individual. And this one individual happened to be a guy who we placed through Carry Club on that organization's board, because everyone kept on talking about this guy who did a great job putting this whole event together and how it was so successful, etc. It wasn't until later on that I discovered that it was through Carry Club. That's how he was able to join this organization, join the board, and made such an impact. And it was just like, it's such like out of body experience to see that this person who I've never met used my platform, joined this board, had such a profound impact with this organization. And the cherry on top of all this is the fact that this organization happens to be one of the organizations that had an impact in my life. It's one of the organizations that I benefited from as a recipient of their service and as part of their program. So it's like it really came full circle, and that was pretty cool.
That's incredible. Sorry, go ahead.
Love it. No, I was just going to say I love it. I love the story. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the questions, I kind of have a follow-up question to that. I mean, one of the things that has happened obviously in this past year is, the murder of George Floyd, the uprisings that happened across the country, the Black Lives Matter movement all of a sudden becoming front and center for the first time for a lot of people. Companies started to react to this in ways that we had never seen before. I mean, what has kind of your experience been as it relates to Carry Club to this growing conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So, I mean, as a Black man, I've always had that in mind when I started Carry Club. Board diversity has been one of the many areas where there's been a lack of representation at the table, and I've always really worked hard to get companies to understand that and like really lean into it and buy into it. I'm fortunate that many of our clients have been very receptive, and we've been able to do a lot there. But what the movement did was that it really magnified in a way that I never would have expected, but fully appreciate. Magnified that to companies. And so we have a lot of companies coming to us now, recognizing this huge blind spot, recognizing the gap, and are happy to lean into this and want to work very closely with us to be more intentional about establishing a board matching program for their employees. And I can't stress enough how important it is. I mean, our platform, we match young professionals with nonprofit boards. We start off with the young professional board. They go by different names: associate board, junior board. But that entryway, that gateway is the thing that's the foundation that makes it possible for underrepresented people to just dip their toe into what it's like to be a board member and build their network, build their experience, and makes it possible for us to have a more robust and more diverse pipeline of professionals who will eventually graduate to join the governing board. And 2/3 of our members make it to the governing board. And certainly that experience on the nonprofit side parlays into your experience level and ability to join the corporate board. So we are at that foundation, and that's something that we take very seriously, something very proud of, is that we're able to introduce a pipeline of candidates to boards in general. Although our focus is on nonprofits, it really does expand out as they progress in their career.
I think it's so cool because in a way you're sort of future proofing these organizations with just a really diverse group of younger professionals who, I think many might consider more progressive and open-minded, or, leading with their heart. So I think it's just such a fascinating long-term strategy that, God, I just think it's so important. It's awesome.
It's incredibly important. I mean, we live in a world that is a diverse world. We live in a country that's a diverse country. It is unconscionable for a company or a nonprofit to not embrace this. Unconscionable. But beyond that, if we're going to separate the fact that fact, we have to at least acknowledge the fact that it's good for your organization. Like, this is genuinely and like statistically materially beneficial to your organization to have that diversity. You are better off because of that. So there really is not a good reason to not embrace it.
Well, I love the fact that you're already showcasing from a bottom line perspective, like the success story that you talked about was literally a nonprofit's bottom line.
Yeah.
And so many of the guests that we bring on talk about how diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging absolutely helps organizations from that perspective. So I love the fact that you are leading with that. And then the whole silver lining is, oh, by the way, this is just the right thing to do. So I'm really, really impressed with that. I'm curious a little bit. So, because did you talk about the business model itself for like how so you don't charge nonprofits, or you do charge nonprofits? How does that all work?
Oh no, we do not charge nonprofits. We do not. So
Okay.
we are in tech startup speak. We're a SaaS platform, and enterprise SaaS. So our clients are for-profit corporations. It's the ones that I just mentioned, your Deloitte's, your Morgan Stanley's, Unilevers, etc. So these are our clients. They pay us for their employees to have access to our platform. Part of the reason why it makes sense for them to pay us to do this instead of trying to build it in-house is board matching is deceivingly complicated. It seems like a very easy thing to put together, but it is actually very complex when you like dissect the different moving parts that need to all align for the experience to go well. And when you try to do that in-house, like the reason why our clients love us is because we take all of that work and automate it, and we streamline it. And so they don't have to worry about the minutia. We take care of that whole thing, and we could do it not just in one city, but with like any city. So that's what they're paying us for. The value, the long-term value to the company stretches beyond like our ability to manage the administrative nuance of board matching. They recognize that these board opportunities are a great, incredibly like time-tested method for building future leaders in their organizations. I almost never have to convince a company that this is great for leadership development because they have proof among their executive leaders that the ones who are involved with boards tend to be the ones who are their best leaders. And so what we come in and say is like, you already understand the value of this. We want to make it possible for you to do it at scale. And that's what we're great at. Beyond that, we also recognize that being on a board, regardless of your background, it will expose you to experiences that may not be your own experience. It will expose you to communities that may not be your own community. And that exposure in and of itself actually does promote more empathy and really does build individuals who are much more open and inclusive than if you were to try to teach that in like a in-person class or something. Like the experience really does over time. It takes about a year or two until for you to like really start to see those behavior changes, but it does happen. And so the companies appreciate that value. And so all those things combined with retention, with leadership development, with certainly the professional networking that happens when you're on a board, all benefit the company.
Rhoden, I love the impact that you're having, and I love the fact that you created a model. And congratulations on getting into Techstars and being able to scale everything. So you're on your path to continue to scale, grow, make an impact, everything like that. What does the world look like 20 years from now when you've done everything that you've done on the path that you've already outlaid laid out?
20 years from now, I never want to hear a company say that they have a pipeline problem when it comes to recruiting board members. And certainly that should not be the case for any nonprofit, but certainly on the corporate side, I should never want to hear that like we have a pipeline problem. We can't figure out who has the right experience to join our corporate board. 20 years from now, I want to really create and build a community of people in the corporate world who understand that we're all in this together. And in order for any one individual to move forward, we all need to be lifted. And that is just intuitively true. It's true for many reasons, but you learn that truth through experience. And so what I really appreciate about what we're doing is we want to bake in experiences to get people to that point, rather than saying like, hey, just do what I tell you to do because I said so and look at the numbers. So Carry Club, over time, we're going to have thousands of members in many like influential companies who will have that experience, and will be able to bring those experiences to bear as leaders within their companies, and certainly as board members at corporations across the United States that will have a global impact.
What, one thing I've kind of been thinking about, you talked about empathy, and those sorts of things. Is there anything that happens? Do you find that these young professionals who you're working with, I mean, is there kind of learning happening, even if it's just amongst themselves as they sort of network, but do they ask you for like, hey, I'm looking to, learn this or be better at this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that question makes sense, but are they, what else are they looking for, these professionals who come to you, as far as maybe personal development? Is there any of that involved in the relationship?
Yeah, so we try to be very proactive in when it comes to learning. We really want to try to meet every one of our members where they are, and not make assumptions about what they do and do not know. We understand that this is a growth journey, and so some people will be at different stages in that journey. And so for us, it's about being attentive to our members and adapting the experience of being part of Carry Club to kind of close that learning gap. In a very more specific way, earlier this year, the summer, when the protesting started, we invited a few nonprofits to speak about the experience they're having on the ground, to really allow our members in the corporate world, who were in many cases kind of removed from what was happening on the ground, and removed from the experience because if they had not experienced it personally. We invited some nonprofits to speak about what was happening on the ground with the protesting and with just social inequity and the opportunity gap in education. We wanted to bring that to them. And we, like every one of those webinars that we hosted over the summer, were very well attended. And so we kind of see it at Carry Club, we see it as our responsibility to get to know our members and kind of provide those safe learning experiences that allows them to grow as individuals. And certainly we encourage nonprofits and work with nonprofits to provide a similar experience that ties into their own board roles. What we also see is that many of the individuals who end up joining nonprofit boards tend to gravitate towards organizations that has some kind of connection to some sort of life experience they've had. I ended up joining a nonprofit in New York City called Rhoden New York. And that only became possible because I went to a New England boarding school. I needed to play a sport in the spring, and I ended up joining a sport that I'd never heard of before called crew. I became, by my senior year, the captain of the crew team. I really appreciated the sport, had a great experience, made a lot of friends that I'm still close to this day. And I found out that there's a nonprofit in New York called Rhoden New York. So it just seemed like a perfect fit for me based on what I was already interested in. I had no idea before that was even possible for me to be involved with a nonprofit that kind of aligned with something that I cared about in that kind of specific way. And so I got involved with Rhoden New York, still involved with them. And that experience kind of exemplifies a lot of what we see with our members and the organizations that they join. They were involved with something either in high school or college, or they were impacted in one way or another personally, or their family member was, and they, to the corporate world, work hard, heads down, and don't have an easy path to figuring out what is out there, what opportunities are available to them outside of their like work bubble. And so Carry Club solves that. Sometimes I like to describe us as a dating site. Like you sign
Yeah,
up, you build
right.
a page, and we have a bunch of other we have a bunch of nonprofits that also have a profile page, and our job is to help you discover something that you're already passionate about and make it easy for you to be involved.
Well, do
I
you? Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good, GB. I love the simplicity. I love the model that you're doing. Obviously, executive director of a nonprofit. I love how you're um, bringing visibility to some really like board members, good board members. If you're lucky enough to get good board members, they it's an extension of the team, because many times nonprofits they're on a budget, right? So even if you have a good gala, even if you go 20-50% over your what your forecast is, that money many times is earmarked for some major initiative. So hiring people on all the time isn't always a luxury like that. So I love what you're doing. I think the model is fantastic. So from one nonprofit to somebody who's putting out a service like this, I'm certainly going to get involved with this. If like, because I know you're very East Coast, but I gotta imagine, do you have nonprofits? Do you have organizations kind of out here in the Rocky Mountain Range?
So our goal for 2021 is to take Carry Club national, which is why we're in the middle of closing a funding round right now. I want to make sure that everyone has access to this opportunity, and that is our goal. So we'll meet you there next year, which is not that far away, thankfully. Hopefully 2021 is going to have a lot more going for it than this year, but we're looking forward to
Yeah.
that. And we actually are doing this through, first of all, that was my entire goal when I started the company. I did not want this to be New York centric. I wanted this to be available to anyone and everyone. And so we now know for sure that we have lots of companies that want to be able to provide that to their employees. We have lots of nonprofits like yours that are looking for amazing candidates. And so there's really no reason why this should not be national. And that's where we're going to go.
That's fantastic. Well, Rhoden, this has been awesome, man. Really great to connect with you. And yeah, like Mike said, I mean, let's stay in contact. We certainly would love to introduce you to nonprofits west of the Mississippi, as they say. So, but thank you, man, for sharing your story. I think what you're doing is just phenomenal, and it's just another way to, really help a group of people in this country who have otherwise never been given those types of opportunities. And I think it's huge, and I think it's more needed now than ever. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for sharing your platform with me. I'm very excited about where we're going. This is one of the things that like really does keep me motivated. I can't make everything, I can't solve every problem, but I know that with what the work that we're doing at Carry Club, it's something that will actually have a lasting impact in terms of the people that it will reach, the companies, the nonprofits, the individuals that we place, but also let's never forget the fact that this is also impacting the people that the nonprofits serve. So it's a model that, I mean, first of all, like, why did this already exist? But let's make this actually be something that changes lives.
Absolutely.
Love the impact. Thank you so much for being part of the show today.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for continuing to listen in. Chooseinclusion.com is the website. You can find all the different listening venues and apps from there. So yeah, keep checking in with us. We will continue to do what we do. So thank you all for being a part of it. And take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone.